والنار فيها النخل ذات والحب ذو العصف والريحان فبأي آلاء ربك الرحيم ولكل Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi.
Thank you for Mr. Edi Irawan.
The next agenda is singing the national anthem. To all audiences, to all audiences, you may have a seat.
The next agenda is a report by the Chief of Committee of National Argument Debating Championship 2020, Mr. Muhammad Azmil Umur. For Mr. Muhammad Azmil Umur, respectable time is all.
Cek. Oke. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi dan salam sejahtera buat kita semua. Oke. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Rabbi shrah li wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. First of all, let's thank to Allah Subhanahu wa taala who has given us his mercies and blessings so we can attend, which is online and offline for the committee. Secondly, salat and salam always be given to our proper likeness from the Jahiliyah era to the Islamiyah era, namely Islamic religion. Okay, the Honorable, the Vice Rector, Honorable, the Advisor of UKM argUMent, Honorable, the President of UKM argUMent, Honorable, all adjudicators of argUMent Debating Championship 2020, and all beloved participants, also the whole committee of EDC 2020 that I really appreciate. Okay. for the Chief of Committee report, I would like to tell you about this event. When the first time of argUMent debating championship conducted by UKM Argu Bali Nusra level, and then in 2019 EDC went to national level of argUMent debating championship for all of the competition. Okay, because today's are the special years that we face the pandemic of coronavirus, and due to this condition, the committee now is in the auditorium M. Yusuf Abu Bakar, the University of Mataram, and to enliven EDC 2000, the committee for the public speaking and writing opinion send their team from all university in Indonesia, university level, opinion, high school level. There are 38, and the participant public for writing opinion high school level, there are 30. And there are 3 days. The first day is today, the second day is tomorrow, and this agenda will close in which is for the participant of EDC, for all of the participants must be join the seminar. Okay. I hope you enjoy this competition. For debate participants will start the prelim from tomorrow, then in Sunday. I think thank you for the LDT, Lombok Debating Sponsorship. There are LPP NTB, Straya Language Institusi NTB, Bank Dinar, Bank BPD Bali, Karya Kencana, FI Rasih, kepada media partner kita yang dan juga media UKM. Ini yang dapat saya sampaikan, lebih dan kurangnya saya mohon maaf. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you.
Opening speeches. The first speech will be delivered by the President of UKM argUMent, the University of Mataram, Mr. Ahmad Khairul Wardi. To Mr. Ahmad Khairul Wardi, responsible time is all yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum. First of all, let's give thanks and praise to our God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has given the mercy and blessing so we can attend this event, argUMent Debating Championship 2020. Secondly, my first and salutation always be given to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who has guided us from Jahiliyyah era to Islamic era, namely Islamic religion. Honorable Director Mataram University, Dr. Andes, Profesor Dr. Haji Lalu Husni, the Vice Chancellor of Students and Alumni Affairs, Honorable the Advisor of UKM argUMent, Dr. Andes Haji Baharudin Elhum, Honorable the chief and all educators of debate competition, public speaking and writing opinion, argUMent Debating Championship 2020. Honorable the Chief of Committee in this event, Argument Debating Championship 2020, my brother Muhammad Azmil Umur, and also to all beloved participants in this event. Well, everyone, I want to tell you about something about in this morning. First, when you have registered yourself as a participant in each competition, like debate competition, writing day, you have become a champion for yourself. You have become a champion. So thank you. So guys, please give a applause for all of you all as the participants. Second, I have a dream today that one day Argument Debating Championship from national, because I truly believe that in this world nothing is impossible. Like anything is possible with your dreams, plans, prayer, and action. Because in argument, but our dreams are patience and prayers. Right. I want to say thank you very much to all beloved participants, especially to our committee in this event, who work hard and play hard to implementation for our event in this morning. All of you are an amazing team in this morning, in this today. So please give applause for our committee. Very much to all the other participants and our committee. Good luck to our competition. Have a nice day.
Thank you for Mr. Ahmad Khairul Wardi.
The next speech and also open the National Argument Debating Championship 2020 by the Vice Rector of Studentship and Awami Affairs, the University of Mataram, Dr. Insinyur Hajah Eni Yuliani MSE, respectable time is all yours.
mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajmain amma ba'du. Yang terhormat pembina UKM cintai dan banggakan Presiden UKM saudara Hairil Muhammad Ajmil Umur dan sekretarisnya saudara Didik Pratama. Dan marilah kita panjatkan kehadirat Allah Subhanahu wa taala karena limpahan rahmat dan karunia-Nya alhamdulillah melalui kegiatan argUMent Championship tahun 2020 dan junjungan kita Nabi besar sallallahu alaihi wasallam sebagai penyuluh dan pembimbing ke jalan yang lurus datang ke muka bumi membawa cahaya ilmu hakiki dan abadi. Terima kasih kami sampaikan kepada penyelenggara UKM argUMent Universitas Mataram atas inisiatif tema yang cukup menantang, yaitu Embark in a Greater Adventure by Unleashing Your Unlimited Potential. Dengan tiga kategori lomba debat, yaitu lomba debat, menulis opini, dan public speaking. Dan debat menjadi salah satu bagian penting dari kompetisi di era global. Kompetisi debat menuntut wawasan yang luas, kemampuan berbahasa Inggris yang baik, dan kemampuan berargumentasi. Akan meningkatkan kemampuan komunikasi mahasiswa dalam berinteraksi dengan masyarakat internasional. Sedangkan untuk membuat keputusan berdasarkan analisis yang logis dan faktual. Kompetisi debat mahasiswa ini tentunya sangat bermanfaat untuk meningkatkan kualitas lulusan dan pendidikan tinggi. argUMent Debating Championship merupakan salah satu ajang positif bagi mahasiswa untuk menunjukkan kemampuan terbaiknya dalam berpikir kritis dan berkomunikasi dalam bahasa Inggris. Tentunya juga untuk meningkatkan kepercayaan diri, mengembangkan jejaring dan kebanggaan terhadap individu maupun kebanggaan Universitas Mataram. Sebagaimana kita ketahui juga bahwa dan inovatif mahasiswa serta membangun soft skill yang baik. Pengembangan kompetensi serta dalam pengembangan kompetensi tersebut diperlukan berbagai upaya untuk meningkatkan kualitas mahasiswa. Kemampuan berbahasa yang baik. Kemampuan bahasa yang baik akan meningkatkan kemampuan komunikasi mahasiswa. Sekali lagi, kompetisi, semoga apa yang menjadi harapan kita dapat tercapai dan apa yang kita lakukan hari ini bermanfaat bagi kita semua dan lembaga tercinta Maha Esa senantiasa membimbing kita di jalan yang diridhoi dan memberikan rahmat serta karunia, rahmat dan karunia-Nya dalam penyelenggaraan kegiatan ini. Mohon maaf apabila ada hal yang kurang berkenan. Dengan melafazkan Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, acara pembukaan argUMent Debating Championship 2020 pada hari ini tanggal 27 November 2020 dengan resmi dinyatakan dibuka. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Mr. Iras Anugrahadi, respectable time is all yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Start our main event. Let's pray together for a moment. Allow me to lead prayer based on Islam religion and non-Islamic من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا ناعما حمدا شاكرين حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافي مزيده. يا ربنا لك الحمد كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك الكريم وعظيم سلطانك. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد. ربنا اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وذنوب والدينا وارحمهما كما ربيانا صغارا ولجميع المسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات. اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وارنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. اللهم إنا أعوذ بك من علم لا ينفع ومن قلب لا يخشع ومن نفس لا تشبع ومن دعوة لا يستجاب لها. Ya Allah yang maha pengasih bagi maha penyayang, pada hari ini dan syukur kehadirat-Mu atas segala rahmat dan karunia-Mu yang telah Engkau limpahkan kepada kami semua. Jadikanlah kegiatan argUMent Debating Championship 2020 yang diselenggarakan oleh UKM argUMent di Auditorium Universitas Mataram ini sebagai ajang memperluas ilmu pengetahuan dan wawasan kami, sebagai tempat saling bersilaturahmi satu sama lain dan universitas kami. Ya Allah yang maha memberi pertolongan, acara ini ditujukan tidak lain adalah untuk memperoleh ridha-Mu semata. Untuk itu berilah petunjuk dan bimbingan kepada kami agar kami dapat menjalankannya. Berikanlah kepada kami tekad, kekuatan, keikhlasan, lindungan dan bimbingan-Mu untuk menjalankan kegiatan ini agar terlaksana dengan baik. Ya Allah yang maha mengabulkan doa, kabulkanlah doa dan permohonan dari hamba-hamba-Mu ini. Rabbana taqabbal minna innaka Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina adzaban nar. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun alal mursalin. Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are reaching the last agenda. I'm Muhammad Amri Fadli.
And I'm Marini Mandalika Lamri. We are, as the master of ceremony, we do apologize if we made any mistakes.
Thank you very much.
Good morning and wabarakatuh.
Is it better? Okay, I think that it is. So, is it clear? Audio check one more time before I start. Am I clear? Okay. Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. National argUMent Debating Championship 2020, and we are so grateful to have you guys in this competition. And I would like to give a small introduction into the edge code. before in this tournament, we are having Kak Mairel from Universitas Diponegoro, and also we are having Kak Devi Salsabila from UNER, and also me, Jagat from UNER. And we are going to do the debating seminar. But before that, I would like to say that all credits in these slides all belongs to the edge score from the NUDC 2020, because of these slides are credits belong to them, and shout out to them. We are so thankful, and also we consider that their slide is quite complex and easy to be understood. That's why we use this. And also, without any further ado, let's start the debate seminar. And let's start with the very fundamental thing. We already know what the debating is, but in a quiet discussion, that debating is speech contest in which that we are in this I didn't see that clearly. So yeah, in which the debating is not only about deliver your speech, and we are not going to judge your accent, but more likely we are going to see how that you are going to be able to explain your logic. So moving on to the next slide, please. So obviously in argument debating championship we are using British parliamentary system, we already know. So in the next slide we are going to talk about British parliamentary. Okay. So obviously in British parliamentary, as what we know, we still have two sides debating in a round team, and each team consists of two members, meaning that in a round that we are having eight debaters in a round, and also 4 teams debating. Second, we are having the opening and closing team that defending the same side but still judged as two different teams. So we are not saying that the opening government and the closing government are trending in this side, but more likely even if they also the same thing happened in the opposition side. And lastly, in British parliamentary format, we also allowing POI same side teams. For example, that the closing government is not allowed to POI the opening government, and the opening government is not allowed to POI your closing government, and so on. Happen in the usual rules that we are going to have 7 minutes and 20 seconds for each speakers, and also 15 minutes of guest building in this tournament. And the debate in British parliamentary system that we conduct also happen just like usual, that the debate committee this slide is quite good. And hello, okay, so or can I just, is it okay now? I think that is good, guys. Can I use my own share screen instead?
It was just better.
Is it better for you guys?
No, it's just changed. Sometimes it's better and sometimes it's not really clear right now.
Using mine. Okay. So sorry for the inconvenience. I would like to change the share screen into my own. Thank you guys for stating the topics.
Well, it's much better.
Okay. I believe it should be better now since I am using my own share screens. So I'm just going to continue in the flow and explain the flow of the debate. So the debate starts with the Prime Minister's speech, and also followed by the Leader of Opposition, and also the Deputy Prime Minister, and also we are going to close the debate in the opening half by inviting the Leader of Opposition, and opening the debate from the closing half by inviting the Member of Government, and then Member of Opposition, and closing the government debate by inviting the government whip, and closing the debate as whole by inviting the opposition. So that's the usual that happens, just like usual actors of students as their vulnerable actors, and the closing teams brought the actors of government, and that's how that you could distinct your own identity, in which that the opening brought students as the vulnerable actors, and closing bring the government as their actors involved. So in which that both of the things should as the team, that in order to win, that you have to explain why that your actor is facing the most problematic situation, and how that your actor is going to be the most vulnerable one. So that's how that you could establish this strong identity in that regard. And in the second reason is you could win by being able to take the most relevant question by answering the most relevant question, in which there are several problems that have been brought by several teams in the debate, and then you could answer the problems and provide logical reasoning and solution in that in those problems that have been in the debate. And the next one is by being the team that is able to answer the questions in debate. It means that, for example, several patterns that being proposed in the motion, for example, will or will not your solution is going to be effective in answering the question or the problem that occurring that thrown in the debate. And in the fourth is that you could win by being the team that being brought the most relevant cases and answers to the debate to the question of the motion. So in that, for example, you have to brought the most explanation that's still in the spirit of the motion, and not bringing actor outside of the motion. And lastly, and most importantly, you could win by providing and having a good case, in which that it means, for example, you brought good arguments, and for example, that you could argument, for if in things of good structure, you are providing step-by-step kind of analysis and explaining the likelihood why the government would or would not happen in inside, and also providing the fact why that it still related to the motion. Yeah. So moving on to the next slide. If you have any questions, please put it by chat or in the next slide, that why you may lose in the BT debate. First of all, you may lose because of, for example, that as the team that you may got your idea or your case is being underdeveloped, and you may explain certain things, but there is no step-by-step analysis on that. So that's why your case may be set as the underdeveloped cases. And also it is stuck up for the closing for the teams that being repetitive in the debate, because of we don't
phenomenon is good or not. So you believe that rather than being chosen by the president, Supreme Court judge might be better if it's being popularly elected. Or if you're an opposition team, then you say that no, it's better that if a Supreme Court judge is being chosen by the president. So basically, value judgment is you judge certain phenomenon that happen in the society, analyze whether it brings more harm or whether it brings more benefit. Next. Note. One, just because it is a value judgment debate does not mean it doesn't need to have any mechanism. So for example, need mechanism. Oh, I'll explain that. I'll explain later. I just state the points first, right? Second, just because it is a proper debate does not mean it doesn't need a philosophy, a principle argument. And third of all, do not change the expectation of the motion at your own volition. So first of all, just because it's a value judgment debate does not mean it doesn't need to have mechanism. What does it mean by this is that just because you judge, just because you are actually debating upon value judgment motion in which you judge whether or not something is beneficial or bring more harm does not mean it doesn't require a mechanism. The example is on the motion that we previously talked about under the motion that this House believes that Supreme Court leader should be chosen by popularity votes. Well, this kind of motion is a value judgment. You judge whether a Supreme Court leader is going to be better if it's chosen by popularity vote or whether when it's being chosen by the president. However, it still requires mechanism. So for example, if you're a government team, you need to explain how would it look like if the Supreme Court leader is being chosen by the society, by popular vote? Are you going to use voting, just like the presidential election, or are you going to use another types of way? For example, the Supreme Court leader should campaigning or something. So you still need mechanism, even though it's a value judgment motion. Second of all, just because it's proposal debate does not mean it does not need a philosophical or a principle argument. This is also very important because there are a lot of cases when people just jump right into the practical argument, and that is completely fine. I mean, like, you can do that, of course. However, it's also good if you can actually find a principal argument, if any. So, for example, on the motion of this House would vaccinate society through air. So, for example, as a government of one particular country or the government of the world, you would vaccinate society through air. So, you shouldn't only talk about the impact of that proposal, for example, saying the efficacy of how now all people can be vaccinated. So you are basically preventing the society from getting sick, but you can also talk about the principle on how the government having the obligation to protect the society and at any cost. And you can say that vaccinating the society is one of the way in which the government giving protections to the society. So principally, this proposal is justified. So just because it's proposal motion, sometimes the principal argument exists, and it's going to be very good if you can actually find that. However, of course, practical argument is also equally important. Third of all, do not change the expectation of the motion at your own volition. This is also quite similar with the idea on how you shouldn't actually limit certain motion to your own expectations. So, for example, if the motion just say that this House regret the rising trend of consumerism, then yeah, it should be talked about consumerism in general. You shouldn't limit it into, for example, consumerism in Indonesia or consumerism in United States. So just follow the motion as it is. If you have something that you don't understand, please ask the ACOR. Don't use your own imagination. All right, next. Second is about definition. Definition can be given in few ways. First is translating keywords into a more understandable words. For example, for example, this House regret. Wait, I cannot really see it, but yeah, I cannot really see the example that being presented. However, like, let me just give my own example. Like, in giving definition, you don't have to define every single wording of the motion. For example, on the motion of this House regret the rise of this House regret the rising trends of hedonistic lifestyle. You don't have to define what is regret, what is rising. What you need to explain is the rising trend of hedonistic lifestyle. So you explain what is hedonistic lifestyle, how does it look like, how the society acts under this particular trend. So you don't have to explain every single word that exists on the motion. Just explain something that is not understandable, something that is very new, new kinds of vocabulary that we are not using on a daily basis. Second of all, providing picturizations of the problem or the phenomenon and what you will do, what is your solution or what is your stance. So for example, on the motion of this House would intervene Syria, you should actually giving portrayal about intervene. Like we might know as a general person that intervene means you're going to attack Syria, but how it would look like. So for example, you can say that intervene means you're going to attack Syria using military power. However, you're going to use the just war principle still. You're not going to hurt civilian and so on. Our goal is simply to topple down the current regime, for example. So like you need to give a picturization upon how the intervention would look like, right? And then this is also a notes to remember. Clarify room of debate or limitation. Specify where or when this debate is placed, but this doesn't mean you have to be very, very specific. You have to be as general as possible. So even though you cannot limit the debate just based on your own preference, but sometimes there is motion that requires you to think on a perspective of several kinds of people, or there is certain kinds of debate that requires you to think under a specific time frame. So for example, under the motion of with the benefit of hindsight, this House would split Indonesia into federal countries. So instead of being one united country, one republic, just like what we are today, there's a motion that's saying that with the benefit of the hindsight, we should actually split into federal countries. So there will be Republic of Java probably and Republic of Kalimantan and so on and so on. So because the motion is saying with the benefit of the hindsight, it means you need to talk under the perspective that you will know what happened in the current status quo. Like you have the knowledge of what already happened currently when Indonesia is standing as one republic, and you should debate under those under the understanding that you have this knowledge. So it's not like you can, for example, guess what will happen if we actually being one republic and what will happen if we are actually dividing into several federal countries. No. So the debate is about with the knowledge that you have now, because currently we are a one republic, you should contest this knowledge that you have now with the imagination. What if we are actually splitting into federal countries? So yeah, sometimes the motion requires you to talk under a specific time frame, specific knowledge, or specific areas. Next. Okay, next we're talking about stance. Stance is about what you're proposing or what you're trying to prove. For example, on the motion, this House would set Truth and Reconciliation Commission to the victim of 1998. The stance is setting up TRC and prohibits people from going to trial. So you need to have a clear understanding regarding what you're going to do on this debate. So for example, on this motion, when you are setting up TRC, Truth and Reconciliation, it means that you should explicitly claim that by setting up TRC, you will prohibit people from going to trial, because it's going to give, because this stance is important because it's going to give impact towards your argument, because government team most likely going to run argument about how victims closure is most important, how truth and reconciliation is most preferable, because we talks as a family, we talks in a more intimate manner in comparison to a trial. When you are having judge, everything is being done into a more formal way. It's more related to the procedural and legal punishment rather than the victim's closure, so it's not preferable. So setting stance is very important because it will impact your arguments and how the debate will goes on. Second of all, the example of this House regret the rise of choice feminism. Your stance is to prove that the concept of choice is bad in achieving the goal of feminism. So this is basically explaining when you say, for example, this has triggered the rise of choice feminism, your stance is, yeah, you hate choice feminism. You explain why, for example, the choice of women basically is influenced by so many patriarchal values that they might not even realize it. There should be a standardized expectation of what could a woman achieve or what a woman should do in their life. So that is your stance. So that is why stance is important, because you basically stating what you hate and what you don't hate, what you like and what you don't like, what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. And all of those are important because it's going to impact your argument. Next. Okay, definition challenge. Definition challenge is a method that can be proposed by a teams when one team is giving an unfair definition. So, for example, there is a definition that is undebatable. For example, under the motion of this House believe that ICC has failed Africa. Say, for example, if the government team defined that, for example, ICC stands for Indonesia Cricket Community or Indonesia Cheerleading Community, then that is not debatable, because what would Indonesia Cheerleading Community do with Africa, right? There's no such thing. That's basically not debatable because that's not correlated at all. So as opposition team, you can say that, oh yeah, the definition that being given by the government team was wrong. We're not talking about the ICC, that Indonesia Cheerleading Community. We're talking about the International Criminal Court, and we talk about why it has failed Africa. Yeah, so of course, we hope that there's no such thing, but in case those kind of things happen, you can actually challenge the definition that being given. The second of all is self-proving. For example, this House believes that technologies bring more harm than good. So, for example, you define, the government side of the House define the kind of technologies that we're talking about here is the kind of technologies that are beneficial to the education and health system. So, for example, they say that we're only talking about, for example, online learning machine, or we're only talking about medical equipments that using technologies. That is basically self-proving because the definition that they're given is correct. However, online learning and medical equipment is also a part of technology, so the definition is basically correct. So, but however, the problem is that it's self-proving. Of course, when we talk about technologies that related to education, technologies that related to medical equipments, of course, it's bring more. It's bring more harm. So, if it's being reversed, So, for example, if the motion is this House believe that technologies bring more harm than good, then the example would be the government only talks about, the machinery or the technologies that we're talking about here is limited only to machine guns, only talking about robot and drones that being used in war, and all of those are very harmful because it improves the victim and the casualties of war. Well, that is a self-proving definition, because those definitions about robot, about drones, about machine guns, it's true that it's a technology, so the definition is actually correct, but it's actually self-proving because it gives no room for the opposition side of the House to actually debate about it. So the opposition should come and say that we shouldn't only talk about technologies such as drones or machine guns. We should also talk about the technology for medical equipment, education, and so on. So avoid giving a self-proving definition. Third of all, there is also definition that has no link to the motion. For example, is if the motion is this House should ban homework, and then the government side of the House somehow define homework as household chores. So, like, for example, sweeping the floor or cleaning the dishes, or for example, homework means you cleaning the garden. Well, it does not correlate at all with the motion, right? Because the homework that we're talking about here is most likely homework that being given from school, how it gives stress to the children, but in another side, how it actually improves the ability of self-learning of the student. So that kind of definition is not only not correct, but not correlate at all with the motion. Okay, next. Okay, spectrum of stances. So for example, on the motion of this house, so for example, on the abortion, why we talk about spectrum of stances here is because sometimes there's this soft and there's this bold stance. What kind of stance that you should bring? Well, most of the debaters would say the bold stance. Well, it's true. However, what I would say is bring the stance that is more strategic and being required by the motion. So, for example, if the motion say this house would ban abortion, then just yeah, it's very strategic that you should ban abortion at all costs, because that would be a very more nuanced and a more wide debate. So, but what actually spectrum of stances? What kind of stances other than the bold stances? There are many kinds of stances. There's this. So, for example, is this picture that you saw on the screen. So, for example, when you talk about abortion, there is this spectrum of stances. There is a complete ban on all abortion, banning abortion on most cases unless the one threatening the mother's life, allowing abortion to rape victim and to protect the mother's life, permission to all abortion before the second trimester, and there's this permission on all kinds of abortion. So you see that there's this spectrum when, so for example, the bold spectrum is to complete ban on all abortion. Softer stance is talking about ban abortion on most cases unless it's threatening the mother's life, and even softer stance is saying that yeah, you should allow abortion to rape victim as well, and then a more softer stance is saying that permission on all abortion as long as it's before the second trimester, and lastly is about permission to all abortion. And so there is this spectrum of stances. What kind of stances that you should use? Well, it depends on the debate, it depends on the motion, so just be careful with that. Next. Opposition approach. So as the opposition team, just like stances, just like proposal, for example, like as opposition team, not only that you can actually take different kind of approaches, for example, saying that certain proposal is not true, saying that certain status quo is not enough. There is also an approach in which you see the problem. For example, you can claim that the problem doesn't exist, or you can claim that the problem exists, but the status quo can solve that. You can say that the problem exists, but government is only making things worse, or you can say that the problem exists, but the opposition has a better alternative. So, for example, under the motion of this house regret the rise of Gulabi Gang. So Gulabi Gang is basically a feminist gang in India. This Gulabi Gang is a group of women that beaten men that prove to do harms to women. So, for example, if there's some women being raped, then this Gulabi Gang will come and actually kick and beat these rapists. For example, the motion this house regret the rising of Gulabi Gang. As opposition team, you can say that, oh, the problem doesn't exist. You can say that Gulabi Gang has no problem at all, that Gulabi Gang is actually a good thing because they help women. They actually beat the perpetrators, the rapists, for example, and give what they deserve. So there is no problem with Gulabi Gang. We shouldn't actually regret the rising of Gulabi Gang. Or you can say that, second of all, the problem exists, but the status quo can solve that. You can say that, for example, oh yeah, maybe Gulabi Gang is quite dangerous. However, currently there is already society awareness regarding how beating up people to death is not something that's good, that everything needs to be taken into court. So currently Gulabi Gang is slowly changing and so on. So you can say that as well to prove that the problem does exist, but for example, you shouldn't actually the problem exists, but the status quo is already capable of solving that. That's your proposal is not really important. Third of all, the problem exists, but government is only making things worse. So this is usually happen on a proposal motion. So for example, under the motion of this house would intervene North Korea, and the government side of Dallas bring the case of human right abuse, and then limitation of freedom of expression. The opposite side of the house can say that it's true that in North Korea currently there is this humanitarian issue, that there is this case of freedom of the limitation of freedom of expression and freedom of speech. However, when you invade North Korea, it will not make things better. It will only make things worse, because when you invade using military power, it means most likely North Korea is going to be even more harsh to the society. That is to say that they're going to recruit a lot of people and force more people to become soldiers, for example. There will be more restriction to the society because they're at this status of war. So your proposal is not necessarily helping the, for example, the status quo. Lastly, the problem exists, but the opposition has a better alternative. What do we mean by this is that the problem exists. So for example, you say that, yeah, it's true that the North Korea are actually problematic, that North Korea conduct so many humanitarian issues, for example, but you can say that in opposition team, it's true. However, rather than invading North Korea using military power, we should use a softer approach, for example, using diplomatic approach, for example, using trade and economic incentive relation rather than using military power. You can explain how softer approach such as diplomatic relation is more likely to be accepted by North Korea because it gives more tangible benefit. That's the likelihood of North Korea to change is bigger, rather than when you actually invade them with military power. Most likely they're not going to change because they feel like being threatened, they feel like you are actually hostile to them, and they would actually becoming even more hostile, so it wouldn't necessarily change anything. And the alternative that being brought by the opposition team is more important. So yeah, there's this spectrum of approach. You can say that the problem doesn't exist. You can say that the problem exists, but status quo can solve that. You can say that the problem exists, but the government team only making things worse. You can say that there is this problem, but the opposition have better alternatives. Next. Is this the end of the presentation or no?
Halo Kak, yeah, this is the end.
Oh, okay, cool. So yeah, I think that's the end of this debate. Is there any question? The debate, I'm sorry, I mean the end of these seminars. Is there any question? Going once? Going twice? Going 3 times? Okay, I think it's quite understandable. Yeah, so I will return to Jagat and the committee for the seminars.
Thank you, Kak. Okay, because there is no question regarding the seminar, I would like to maybe it is the end of the debating seminar, and the next one that actually we are going to have technicalities explanation from the TAP team, but because of the time, I would like to just directly invite the TAP team to maybe explain several words. Kak Iqbal, are you there?
Oh, the floor is to committee.
Okay. Because of we are running out of time regarding the today's technical meetings, so I believe that about the material of technicalities that we are going to conduct the debate tomorrow, that has been explained through the slide that we provide in the Tabi, that you can find the link in the Tabi Heroku app of the ADC 2020. So maybe you can read that, guys. If you have several questions, you can drop it by in the WhatsApp group. because of we are not going to conduct the explanation regarding the technicalities that we are going to conduct because of we are running out of time. So I think that's all of the technicalities meeting that we are going to conduct today. Is it okay, guys? Okay, so we are going to close the technical meetings today and have a nice competition for tomorrow. Good luck. Thank you. So we are going to end the meeting because of there is no activities further in the Zoom. Thank you, guys. Ya. Ya, atau biarin.